Today, we're diving into a fascinating book by Joshua Foer called Moonwalking with Einstein. It's all about unlocking the hidden power of our own memories. And it all kicks off with a really simple, super relatable problem.
So let me just ask you straight up. Do you think you have an average memory? Maybe you're even a little forgetful sometimes. If you're nodding your head right now, well, you're definitely not alone.
Actually, you'd be in really good company. See, the author, Joshua Foer, he started out exactly like us. He was this journalist who was constantly forgetting, the drill, where he put his car keys, his girlfriend's birthday, even that classic, "why did I just open the fridge" moment. It's almost painfully relatable, right? But then, while he was on a work assignment, he stumbles into this world that just feels completely alien. He finds this group of people they call mental athletes. And get this, these are individuals who can memorize the entire order of a shuffled deck of cards in less than a minute. 32 seconds.
So what's going on here? Are these people just geniuses, born with some kind of superhuman brain? Or is there a secret, a technique that maybe, just maybe, anyone could learn? This is the exact question that sent Foer on this incredible year-long journey to find an answer.
Okay, so before we can even get into how to remember, we've got to figure out why we forget in the first place. And it turns out our brains aren't broken. They're actually designed to forget things, to let information go.
Take a look at this. It's called the forgetting curve, and it reveals something pretty shocking about our brains. Within just 1 hour of learning something new, we've already forgotten more than half of it. And within a day, poof, most of it is just gone. The important thing to realize here is that this isn't some personal failure. Nope, this is just how our minds work by default. All right, so knowing that forgetting is normal, Foer walks into the U.S. Memory Championship. He's totally expecting to find a room packed with, geniuses and biological oddities. But what he actually finds is something else entirely.
He ends up meeting this guy, Ed Cook, a grandmaster of memory, who just completely shatters his biggest assumption right off the bat. Cook looks at him and says photographic memory is a myth. A detestable myth, he calls it. And then he says his own memory is just quite average. Whoa. Okay, so this wasn't about genetics. Something else was definitely at play.
And it wasn't just Ed. All the other competitors, they all said the exact same thing. This incredible ability they have, it isn't a gift, it's a skill. A skill that they learned using a really, really old technique. And here's the kicker. They all insisted that anyone, absolutely anyone, could do it.
So, what is this big secret? Well, it's not some new age brain hack or a fancy app. It's actually a technique that is 2,500 years old. It's called the memory palace.
And the origin story for this technique is just, wow, it's incredible. So there's this Greek poet, Simonides, way back in the 5th century BC. He survives this horrible banquet hall collapse. Everyone else is gone and the bodies are just unidentifiable. But Simonides realizes something amazing. He can close his eyes and remember exactly where every single person was sitting. By mentally walking through the ruined hall, he could name every victim. And right there, in that moment of tragedy, he had invented the Method of Loci, what we now call the memory palace. So how does this thing actually work? Well, it's surprisingly simple. First, you pick a place you know, like the back of your hand. Your childhood home is a classic. Then, you take whatever you need to remember and turn it into a bizarre, crazy, unforgettable image. Like, let's say you need to remember to buy milk. You might picture a giant cow doing a backflip in your kitchen sink. You place these weird images at specific spots along a mental path through your house. Then, to recall your shopping list, you just take a mental walk. It's basically a hack that plays to our brain's natural strengths. See, we're terrible at remembering boring lists, but we are fantastic at remembering places and really strange visuals.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds amazing, sure, but is it just a clever party trick? Or is there some real science to back all this up? Well, researchers decided to find out.
The big question they wanted to answer was this. Are the brains of these memory champions actually, physically different from ours? Are they wired for memory in some unique way? And the answer, it turns out, was a huge no. MRI scans showed their brains were structurally normal, just like ours. The difference wasn't in the hardware, it was all in the software. When they were memorizing stuff, they were lighting up the parts of their brain that deal with spatial memory and navigation. The exact same parts a London taxi driver uses to memorize 25,000 streets. They were quite literally taking a walk through their memory palaces.
So the big takeaway here is that these mental athletes have simply trained their brains to use their built-in strength. And it's not just about spatial memory.
There's another really powerful technique they all rely on, and it's called chunking.
Okay, just look at this for a second. It's a wall of random numbers. Trying to memorize this would be an absolute nightmare, right? I mean, our short-term memory can only hold about 7 pieces of information at a time. But what if we just change the way we look at it?
Now, watch what happens when you chunk it. That long, meaningless string of numbers suddenly becomes 2 very memorable dates, December 7th, 1941, and September 11th, 2001. See? You've taken completely meaningless data and you've given it meaning. That is the power of chunking.
And look, these techniques, they aren't just for winning competitions. They actually reveal a fundamental principle about how you can make pretty much anything more memorable in your everyday life.
This whole idea is perfectly explained by something called the Baker-Baker paradox. It's a bit of a brain teaser. Studies show that it's way easier to remember that a man is a baker than it is to remember that his last name is Baker. So why is that? Well, because the job, the profession, it's full of images, right? You picture a white hat, flour everywhere, the smell of fresh bread. The name Baker, on the other hand, is just an abstract sound. It's empty. So the real secret to a better memory is learning how to turn every abstract baker into a vivid, picture-filled baker.
So let's get back to our hero, Joshua Foer. He is now completely convinced that this is a skill he can learn. So this guy, the guy who couldn't even remember where he put his keys, spent an entire year training his own average brain. He was preparing to compete in the very same championship he had once just covered as a journalist.
At one point, the founder of the World Memory Championship, a guy named Tony Buzan, basically just threw down the gauntlet. He told Foer to stop asking so many questions and just try it for himself. And really, that's a challenge that applies to every single one of us, isn't it?
And that really brings us to the core message of this whole story. The most profound discovery here wasn't some secret code or a magic pill. It was the simple, powerful idea that an exceptional memory, it's not something you're born with. It's a skill. It's something you build. So, I want to leave you with this one final thought. If you knew for a fact that you could train your memory just like a muscle, what would you do with that power? I mean, you could learn a new language, you could master a tough subject for an exam, or maybe just finally remember the name of every single person you meet. What could you achieve?